I find this to be an extraordinarily strange conversation. We hear a lot of discussion about great concerns about the deficit and the national debt, but the people who talk most loudly and vigorously about this issue are those people who helped create this national debt. So let's be clear about how we got here in the first place, and I want to talk about that. This senator voted against the war in Iraq for a number of reasons, not the least of which it was unpaid for. $3 trillion. That's a lot of money. I didn't hear too much discussion a few years ago about that war. This senator voted against huge tax breaks for the wealthiest people in the country. And you know what? Budgets are two things. I know this is a radical concept. It's not just spending, but it is also money coming in. And if you give hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks, the very wealthiest people, lo and behold, deficits go up. I voted against that. Most of my friends on the other side of the aisle voted for it. I voted against the Medicare Part D prescription drug program written by the drug companies and the insurance companies, not because we don't need a good program for seniors. That was a very wasteful, ineffective way to go. Most of my Republican colleagues who are now jumping up and down about the deficit, they voted for it. I voted against the Wall Street bailout, and I do understand much of that money has been paid back. But nonetheless, I didn't hear at that point, when we bailed out the largest financial institutions in the world, whose illegal behavior, whose reckless behavior drove us through a recession, I didn't hear my Republican friends saying, oh, we can't give them $800 billion. That will drive the deficit up. Maybe I missed that discussion, but I didn't hear it too much. So that's how one of the reasons we got to where we are right now. Under Bush, as we all know, the national debt almost doubled. Second part of the discussion I am not hearing about is we talk about America like we're all in this together. Well, let me give you some startling news. We ain't all in this together. The people on top, the top 1%, the top 2% are doing phenomenally well at the same time as the middle class in this country is collapsing. And Mr. Guyton, when you respond, you tell me what I'm missing here, all right? The United States today has the most unequal distribution of income and wealth of any major country on earth. Top 1% earns more income than the bottom 50%. And I hear the words about political courage. Oh, we need to be really tough. We can throw old ladies in the state of Vermont off the heating assistance program when it gets 20 below zero. Man, that is real political courage. Well, how about some political courage about taking on the big money interests who fund our campaigns, who provide millions of dollars and want tax breaks for the very wealthiest? Let's see some political courage there rather than throwing senior citizens off the LIHEAP program or low-income people off of life and death programs for them. Now, Mr. Secretary, in 2007, the top 1% earned 23.5% of all income in this country. Top 1/10 of 1% took in 11% of all income. The percentage of income going to the top 1% has nearly tripled since the 1970s. Is that right, Mr. Secretary?
I think that's largely right.
From 8% to 23%. Between 1980 and 2005, 80% of all new income created in this country went to the top 1%. Now, when we talk about how we move toward a balanced budget, I would appreciate my friends listening to this. In 2007, the wealthiest 400 Americans made an average of $345 million a year. Under the Bush administration, these 400 top earners saw their incomes double, while their effective federal tax rate was cut almost in half over the past 15 years. So here's the dynamic that you have, which must be thrown into this discussion. Middle class, in many ways, is collapsing. Real unemployment in America today, haven't heard a word about unemployment yet, by the way, is 16%. If you talk about people who've given up looking for work, and people are working 20 hours when they want to work 40 hours. Meanwhile, we have cut substantially taxes for the very, very wealthiest people in this country, and in this agreement, this very poor agreement that the Obama administration agreed to with the Republicans, those are extended again for another couple of years. So I would suggest that when we talk about sacrifice, maybe some of the campaign contributors and the wealthiest people in this country might want to make some of that sacrifice rather than just the middle class. Let me ask Secretary Geithner a couple of questions. I was glad to hear and just let's go through this again. You would agree with me that Social Security has not contributed one nickel to the deficit and that Social Security has a $2.6 trillion surplus right now?
I think that's largely right, yes.
Okay. And would you agree with me that according to all the studies done, Social Security can pay out every benefit owed to every eligible American for roughly the next 25 to 30 years?
I'd have to check that, but I assume if you're quoting it, it's right.
Yeah, it is. And after that, it can pay out about 75 to 80% of all benefits.
That's true, but I wouldn't be so comfortable about that because, as you know, the minimum benefit is not a very rich benefit for many Americans.
No, I know it.
Yeah.
During the campaign, when President Obama was elected, he suggested that the solution to the long-term solvency of Social Security was to lift the cap on upper income folks above $250,000, which I thought was exactly the right thing to do. Is that still the administration's or the president's position?
Well, I want to be careful in how they say this because, again, we want to preserve some capacity for people to come together on something that's going to work. But I'll be direct about it, is that you cannot do this in a way that is fair or responsible by simply cutting benefits, even if you do it in a progressive way. You have to go beyond benefits if you're going to do it in a way that is fair and has any realistic prospect of people coming together around the plan.
Well, I agree with you, and let me just say this. This is a quote from candidate Obama during the campaign, and he said, John McCain's campaign has suggested that the best answer for the growing pressures on Social Security might be to cut cost of living adjustments or raise the retirement age. Let me be clear, I will not do either. End of quote. Do you think that that is still the president's position?
Well, I think the president's position, again, is he wants to be very careful, as you heard him say the State of the Union, to not be solving Social Security in a way that cuts deeply into benefits for people who need it or puts an undue burden
You make me
on
nervous when you
Americans.
say deeply. That's not what the president campaigned on.
Well, I didn't mean to. I mean to change his words, but you can. The president's spoken to this several times the last few days, few weeks. His words govern. I can't quote him for you directly, but of course those are his choices and his words.
Okay, thank you very much.